I am on my way to the western Illinois city of Galesburg to see a few interesting things in town, but I do have a few stops on the way there. I'm now in Normal, Illinois, a suburb of Bloomington, at Carl's Ice Cream, which is kind of a Route 66 fixture, not original or anything, but technically Route 66 does go right by here, so I would still count it. And look at that, there's a freaking Muffler man. This is the work of one of the most famous living folk artists, Mark Klein of Natural Bridge, Virginia, the creator of Dinosaur Kingdom, Foamhenge, all sorts of cool stuff. Would love to go see like his studio and all his attractions down in Virginia someday. But here's one of his Muffler men. You can see him there. He has a smiling ice cream cone and a burger. So this should be pretty good. Inside, they have a vintage blow mold Santa for the holiday season. It's a fairly plain and modern place, but it still has that retro feel. There's two arcade machines, a Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, as well as one with Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong Jr. And the food was good too. I definitely recommend Carl's. Now let's continue down the road towards Galesburg, past the metropolis of Peoria. We're actually going to fast forward a bit into the future on a different trip to Galesburg because I made an unexpected stop in Knoxville, Illinois for the St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 15th of 2020, just as the COVID-19 pandemic was looming over the United States. I wasn't planning on making a video, I just stopped by to eat, and I noticed this old gas station along the main street. Turns out it's a restored Shell station, and the owner invited me to look around. Mr. Gary Goodie has been painstakingly restoring this Shell service station and turning it into a museum workshop, and at this point he's made a lot of progress on it. The station was built in the 1920s and was originally the People's Oil Company, so he's been restoring the exterior to that time period. The interior is jam-packed with all sorts of antiques and memorabilia from the 30s through the 70s.
Remember that song? The Beach Boys.
There's some old drive-in movie theater speakers. There's a Red Crown gas pump. Goodie joined the Navy in 1966 just after graduating high school, and he did serve a year in Vietnam. Those are some model Mustangs designed by Carroll Shelby, and the two in the center are actually signed by him. The back of the old station is now his own auto repair workshop, and this is Goodie's prized possession, a beautifully restored 65 Mustang. When he was a kid, he bought a new 65 Mustang which he loved very much, and after decades of use, it was stolen and destroyed. While he loved his original, he bought this other one, same make, model, and color scheme, which he has meticulously restored. And he did tell me if I returned after the pandemic, whenever that is, he'd take me on a ride, so that is something I'd definitely still like to do. Again, thank you so much for your hospitality, sir, and I hope to visit again soon. I've now arrived in Galesburg, Illinois at the Galesburg Amtrak Station. The primary reason I'm visiting Galesburg today is because I've got to catch a train out of here later this evening, and I have a separate video on that experience. This relatively modern 1984 Amtrak station has a statue of President Abraham Lincoln outside. Lincoln visited this city at least twice, arriving by train both times. The first was on August 24th, 1858 on the campaign trail for the Illinois State Senate seat, and he gave a speech at the Bancroft House Hotel downtown. He visited again 2 months later, and I'll talk about that a little later. There's also an adjoining Galesburg Railroad Museum, which is unfortunately closed for the winter. This station services the California Zephyr, which goes from Chicago to Emeryville, California, in the Bay Area, as well as the Southwest Chief, which I'll be taking. That one goes from Chicago to LA. The Illinois Zephyr and the Carl Sandburg both stop here. That's a more local route that goes from Chicago to Quincy, Illinois. Cargo and passenger trains regularly pass through Galesburg. Now in downtown Galesburg, let's go take a look at the Galesburg Antique Mall, housed in an impressive 1887 building on Seminary Street. It's a very sizable antique shop and there's a lot to look around at. Here's a bunch of vintage toys. These are Cupid dolls, which depict very strange and naked babies. These were very popular in the early 20th century for some reason. Some classic California raisin figurines. And there's Sorcerer Mickey. Here are some old transportation themed models and accessories. I always enjoy seeing some campaign pins. Some good old vintage signage. I found this book interesting. It's from the Italian Masterpieces Special Exhibition that was at the Art Institute of Chicago from 1939 to 1940. There were some very highly esteemed pieces that were lent by the Italian government to the museum. Now, the Italian government at that time was being led by the fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, as you can see written there. I could not believe the stuff they sent over here with the outbreak of World War II. I really wish I could have seen that exhibit. Lots of seasonal items for sale. There's a Charlie Weaver bartender box, a Bugs Bunny head, and some comics. The Hunter's Clock is a bit much. There's a porcelain Charlie McCarthy. McCarthy was of course a very famous ventriloquist doll. Some mini cowboy statues. Up on the second floor, they have some radio sets, music boxes, and even some phonographs. There's an old-timey mechanical horse. Some rare Star Wars toys. For $100 is Han Solo and a Tauntaun, and for $130 you can get a Sand Trooper riding a dewback. While she's usually called Slave Leia dressed like this, they gave her a more PC name here. They call this toy Princess Leia in smaller font with chain. The Beatles in doll form. And here's a bunch of salt and pepper shakers. Doesn't come close to the Galesburg Museum though. On the third floor, they have the Galesburg Historical Society Museum, with a variety of artifacts and displays on the city's history. Here's a historic corn planter. The surrounding area is very agricultural, and I believe this specific type was manufactured around here. It wouldn't be a one-room small-town museum without at least one creepy mannequin. Seriously, if there's one thing in common between them, it's creepy mannequins for some reason. Downtown Galesburg used to have a trolley system, a collection of donated political mementos, like a delegate's ticket to the 1904 Democratic Convention, a display on the local high school, Ronald Reagan actually grew up for a time here in Galesburg. He was here around the age of 7 and attended the first grade in 1916 and 1917. His family moved here so his father could work at the O.T. Johnson department store's shoe department. There's the first grade class register of Silas Willard Elementary School for the 1917 and 1918 year. Ronald Reagan is the second name listed. President Lyndon B. Johnson sent this letter to a local who invited the then retired president to visit the Galesburg Library, and this LBJ extends the invitation for him to visit his own library in Austin, Texas. The same local sent a letter to former President Harry S. Truman, and in this reply, his office said that he couldn't do signatures because of his illness, but it does appear they may have gotten a hold of an autograph afterwards. Mr. Bloomberg later sent a letter to President Reagan asking him to recollect his brief tenure in Galesburg, to which the president actually responded and autographed. This is the locomotive from Kittyland, a small amusement park that operated in Galesburg from 1950 to 1972, so it's long gone. There's the original telephone switchboard. Maytag used to have a plant in Galesburg. Some veterans uniforms. The poet and biographer Carl Sandburg was from Galesburg. I have a separate video on his birthplace. Various washing items and other tools from the olden days. Some historic pianos. A big beautiful Zephyr gas sign. And a sign from the Twin West Cinema. The Antique Mall and Museum was a pleasant surprise, and it's worth stopping in if you're visiting Galesburg. There's a view above Seminary Street and downtown Galesburg. Illinois has a Ronald Reagan Trail, which connects the sites of importance to the upbringing of the 40th president, and this is one of Reagan's boyhood homes at 1219 North Kellogg Street. The Gipper lived in this home in 1916 and 1917. He attended first and a portion of second grade while living here. Reagan was born north of here in Tampico, Illinois, and after Galesburg, the Reagans moved to a small town near Tampico called Dixon, and that is where he primarily grew up, and his boyhood home there is a museum. I will mention the birthplace in Tampico is also a museum. The Reagans didn't live in this house during their entire Galesburg tenure. They initially lived at 1260 North Kellogg, which also still stands and is a private residence. They were only here for a few months. However, the almighty saint did grow up in this very home for a short while. And they only moved a few houses down across the street. Nancy Davis's stepfather also lived in Galesburg for a time, and Nancy spent some holidays and summers here, but Ronald and Nancy never crossed paths until Hollywood later on in their lives. I'm now on the campus of Knox College, a small liberal arts college established in 1838. This particular building is called the Old Main, and it's a very historically significant structure. It is the oldest building on campus, having been completed in 1857. It's a Gothic Tudor building that was designed by a Swedish architect. It also took a lot of inspiration from Hampton Court in England. The reason this building is so important is because it was the site of the 5th Lincoln-Douglas debate on October 7th, 1858. This is the only remaining structure and preserved site of any one of the 7 critically acclaimed debates, so it looks a lot like how it looked when Lincoln and Douglas battled it out. Their words echoed off these very walls. A wooden platform was constructed directly in front of this wall. The crowd of 15,000 would have spectated from behind me. As the college was founded by Presbyterian abolitionists, they did string up a banner between the first and second floor that read Knox College for Lincoln. During this debate, Douglas tried to frame Lincoln as an abolitionist, which he wasn't at the time, using Lincoln's own phrase that, quote, all men are created equal, against him. As Douglas touted self-determination, Lincoln did criticize his inability to recognize the horrors of slavery when he claimed that Douglas was, quote, blowing out the moral lights around us when he contends that whoever wants slaves has a right to hold them. The incumbent senator did go on to win this critical election. However, against all odds, Abraham Lincoln ended up defeating Douglas in the presidential election just 2 years later. It is so amazing to see the preserved environment where a Lincoln-Douglas debate occurred. Near Old Main is the Knox County Courthouse, built in 1886. On the lawn is the Mother Bickerdike Memorial. She was a dutiful and highly respected nurse during the Civil War. The Union men appreciated her so much that they called her Mother. She helped nurse countless soldiers and also contributed to the construction and function of the hospitals at Cairo, Fort Donelson, Shiloh, Chattanooga, and 14 other sites and battlefields. She even rode at the head of one of Sherman's corps during the Grand Review of the Army in DC. General Sherman even said of her, quote, she outranks me. There's also a cannon captured from the siege at Santiago, Cuba during the Spanish-American War. There's the Richardsonian Central Congregational Church. Again, I have separate videos on Carl Sandburg's birthplace and my first Southwest Chief experience, so please go check out those videos, and thanks for watching.